friends, and welcome to the Dreary Midnight Podcast. My name is Lisa. My pronouns are she, they.
My name is Celeste. My pronouns is she, her.
And tonight is a Celeste-led episode. What are we talking about?
Tonight, we're going to do another Appalachian anomaly, and we're
Ooh.
going to talk about the Snallygaster.
Ooh, let's get into it. Intro music.
Intro music. This is also going to be a chill episode, similar to last week, because it's been a very busy
couple of days.
Busy few days.
Yeah. We do potentially have some cool stuff coming down the pike for you.
Yeah, we've been talking.
Yeah.
Nothing's solid yet.
And we will tell you when it happens.
When it is solid. Well, now we're getting settled into our new homes.
Yeah.
I'm in Lisa's new place.
Yeah.
It's so nice. And they have a new mic, too.
Yeah,
so
just
I feel
for
like
us. Yeah.
such a professional.
Yeah. We have the mic stands now and everything. It's great. So tell me about the Snallygaster.
Right. So, surprisingly, you already knew. I didn't know about the Snallygaster, but when I said the topic, you seemed super excited.
So I had heard of the Snallygaster. That said, now they're like, what do you know about the Snallygaster? I realize the answer is I know zero things about the Snallygaster.
You just heard the name?
Yeah.
The reason that I knew the Snallygaster is there's a beer festival that happens in D.C. every year that James and I go to.
I love it.
And it is called Snallygaster.
Nice.
And I just thought it was like a fun, silly name. I didn't realize it was the name of a cryptid. But then I was looking at our little podcast topic shared Google Doc. And I was like, Snallygaster, I know that. So I looked it up.
Does it have any connection to alcohol at all?
Yes and no. It's not like...
Say more.
Well, yeah, we'll get into this. So this is just going to be like a hodgepodge. I don't have a script, so it's just going to be everything I learned in the past 24 hours. So the Snallygaster is a cryptid from Maryland, specifically Frederick County, Maryland, which is...
Hometown? Hometown hunting. All right.
Yeah, literally, it's a county away from where I'm currently am now, which is another reason why I wanted to do it, because I was like, well, I'm in Maryland. Might as well lean into it.
Yeah.
So it is and Maryland has a lot of cryptids. It's a Maryland cryptid from Frederick County, which is just shy of the Panhandle, which would be the Appalachian region. But I'm going to call it Appalachian anomaly anyway, because
does it count as the foothills of Appalachia?
It's like literally like one county away from being Appalachia. So I'm just going to say it's Appalachia because...
Fair enough.
Its existence was first reported in 1909. Something else that happened in 1909. And we're going to take you out of Maryland for a second. We're going to go to New Jersey. So something that happened in 1909 is that there were some strange tracks left in the snow outside of a New Jersey home, which led to the makings of a cryptid that you might know as the Jersey Devil.
Heard of that.
Yes. So we're not going to talk about the Jersey Devil today. That will be for another time.
Yeah.
But that Jersey Devil, it gained like national traction. And so the Maryland journalists were like, we got our own cryptids here. And very coincidentally, also in 1909, there was the first report of a cryptid that was described in the Valley Register, which was a newspaper published out of Frederick County. It was a cryptid described as having enormous wings, a long pointed bill, claws like steel hooks, and an eye in the center of its forehead.
Ooh, spooky.
It's a cyclops.
Yeah. Wild classics tangent, though.
Tell
Um,
me. It's literally like a chimera, so
yeah, it's so
please.
much of a chimera. But there's theories that bones that ancient people thought were cyclops were actually like certain kinds of like rhinos or something.
Hmm.
Because the eye well for old rhinos is very narrow, and so it kind of looks like it's one very
I.
horizontal line, or one very horizontal
Oh.
eye rather than two kind of tiny beady ones.
No, that's so interesting.
Yeah,
I could totally see that. So they weren't crazy. They just didn't know what it looked like
yeah,
when it was alive.
yeah. But are you telling me that winged rhinos used to haunt the Appalachian foothills of Maryland?
I'm telling you that there's this cryptid that was suspiciously made right after the Jersey Devil
Hmm.
that was just a chimera of like different things smashed together.
Okay.
So, for the most part, it's basically like partially a bird and partially a dragon, which
Okay.
honestly, dope as hell.
Or
So,
like a wyvern with a duck bill and one eye.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
a wyvern with a like beak.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, at some point, it evolved into having tentacles come out of its mouth.
What? That went in a very different direction than I was expecting. Good grief.
Yeah, but yeah. So for some reason, it got described as having like a metal beak
Okay.
with sharp talons made of glowing hot metal and octopus like tentacles coming
Okay.
from its mouth. So
Okay.
it's a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
But the first sighting, quote unquote sighting, the Valley Register ran a story about a man named Bill Jefferson who had been walking home when a winged creature attacked him, carried him up to a hill, slashed his jugular with its beak, drained his blood, and dumped his lifeless body in a ravine. How they knew that, I don't know.
Especially since the jugular was sliced and he was dead when they were found.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
why I'm like, that's why
Yeah.
I put, like, I was air quoting
Yeah.
sighting.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, because how can you rule out a
that it was just like a
particular,
normal animal or
yeah,
something.
like depending on how many talons that could be, that's not exactly bear behavior from what I understand, but it's still like something large and predator
Honestly, it's
like.
kind of serial killer behavior.
Yeah, it is a
Like
little
draining
silly.
the blood
Yeah.
and dumping his body in a ravine.
Yeah.
Like instead of eating it.
Yeah. Or like depending on how long the body was there for, like that could just be regular decomposition. Also, circle back to jugular. Like that could just be regular to your jugular blood loss. I don't know. I've never cut my own jugular. Uh
And I hope you never do.
same.
So then after that, a bunch of other like stories and sightings followed. There was a report of a man who saw the Snallygaster drinking 100-gallon tub of water. And then
Okay.
it talked. It said, My, I'm dry. I haven't had good drink since I was killed in the Battle of Chickamauga. It's a battle from the Civil War.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. So basically, now this dragon creature was somehow the ghost of a Civil War soldier.
Okay.
Um,
Dare I ask Confederate or Union?
we're gonna get
It's
into this.
Maryland, so it could easily be both. There could be a whole like his I'm sure there is a whole history podcast about that.
Basically, these sightings, this stuff went on until around July,
Still in 1909?
and then it kind of died down. Snallygaster failed to enter national lore as the Jersey Devil had. So, like, it was very obviously kind of a copycat and a hoax.
Hmm.
But then it kind of started getting a story of its own.
Okay.
So,
Adjacent to the Civil War thing or no?
yeah, we'll get into this.
Okay.
So, before we get into how the Snallygaster was used in a not great way, we're going to
Hmm.
get into the actual name. So, the name has derived. So there were actually a lot of German immigrants
Mm.
around that area.
Mm.
So the German immigrants called it the Schnallgeist
Okay.
or quick ghost,
Okay.
which is usually a term that's some sort of poltergeist.
Okay.
But because of, just the way that language works, Schnallgeist ended up turning into Snallygaster.
Mm.
So the German immigrants, they brought their folklore and superstitions, their folklore including beliefs of ghosts and beliefs of dragons, specifically
Mm.
dragons in the Appalachian Mountain region. The Snallygaster is said to live in caves
Mm.
and the mountains.
Mm.
So the,
Yeah.
hence Appalachian
Yeah. Yeah.
anomalies.
Yeah.
I like this quote. As the physician and polymath Johann Jacob Schucher, no, wait, shoot, I'm so sorry, I'm not German. Schucher?
Let me see.
Schu, it, it has two ch's in it.
Johann Jacob Schucher.
Schucher.
I'm. That is a huge guess there. In a 1723 travelogue. All
Of
right.
the Alps. The mountains were filled with scaly dragons and slimy dragons. Dragon with wings and feet, dragons with 2 legs and 4 legs, with and without wings, and sometimes without wings or legs, but with objectionable heads, with semi human features, and an expression at once humorous and malignant.
That just sounds like 7 kinds of a lizard.
It's fun though.
Yeah.
So these German beliefs came from the Alps and then they traveled over to the Appalachians. Sorry, I read this to James last night. Just maybe it's not. I'm sure if I saw this in real life, I'd be terrified.
Mm.
But there's a book of local folklore
Mm.
called The South Mountain Magic Tales of Old Maryland that
Mm.
was published in 1882.
Mm.
And it included the tale of a hoop snake, a
Mm.
dreaded creature that puts its tail in its mouth when in pursuit of its victim and rolls on with incredible rapidity.
Okay. That sounds a little bit like an Ouroboros. The snake eating its own tail
Yeah,
thing.
that's
Yeah.
exactly basically, but
Yeah.
instead it
It's
rolls
so it's an
toward you.
Ouroboros. It's an Ouroboros trying to play ball where the Ouroboros is the ball.
Yeah.
I love it.
There's a suggestion that the Snallygaster was probably derived, also comes from the idea of the wild hunt,
Okay.
which we've talked about on this
Yeah.
channel before, because it snatches away travelers, and it's also kind of in that immigrant mythology that came over to America,
Yeah.
but also it snatches away unwary travelers, and the Snallygaster kind of has a habit of snatching people away,
Mm.
which we will get to that also.
Yeah.
So before we get into how this was applied in the real world, I do want to say the Snallygaster has a mortal enemy.
Oh, do tell.
Yeah. It is called the I'm good. This is how it's spelled. It's spelled Dwayyo.
The
So I'm gonna
Wayo?
Dwayyo.
That's my guess.
Dwayyo, which is a cryptid that is also from Frederick County, Maryland.
Okay.
Apparently there have been sightings of the Snallygaster and Dwayyo fighting each other.
Okay.
The Dwayyo is basically the best way I can describe it is if it's a wolf, but it stands on 2 legs. It stands on its hind legs. There's not. It's apparently that's kind of it.
Okay.
I it kind of acts like a wolf, and it's just freaky because it walks on 2 legs, and people have said it starts off as normal, looking as normal wolf, and then it stands up, which
Oh,
is
yeah. That
very
also
uncanny
yeah. That also
and
sounds
very
like
creepy.
that sounds like a more of a Scottish version of a werewolf because werewolves in Scottish lore tend to be more helpful.
Yeah, it is a apparently 6 foot tall black haired creature with a bushy tail.
6 foot when it's up on the hind legs.
Yes,
Okay.
that was a person who had a sighting with the Dwayyo.
Was that also in the 18th century or was that
That was
in
actually in the 1960s.
Oh,
Yeah,
very different.
yeah.
Okay.
The Dwyer was also kind of like, it doesn't really have much on it. I'm sure if I did a little more research, but I have 3 articles up, and honestly, it kind of just is like very similar to a wolf. The Snallygaster is pretty interesting because it like flies, and
Yeah.
apparently it also sucks blood. It just does whatever it needs you need it to do. Oh, and you know what's another thing that totally forgot? The
Mm.
Snallygaster, apparently its shriek sounds like a locomotive,
Like a
like a
train?
train.
Okay.
But you know why that's fun?
Mm.
Because there's so many trains in Maryland.
Could it just be a train?
I know, but then you could say like, was that a train or
Or
was
was
that
it
the
the Snallygaster?
Snallygaster?
All right.
um, but yeah, honestly, the Dwyer didn't come out until 1960s. Um, and it was basically a person. He has an alias. His name was John Becker. That wasn't his actual name,
Mm.
but he like reported to police an attack by a mysterious monster. And then the newspapers were like, "Oh, we also saw this thing." And then by before the year was over, it ended.
Okay.
So it was another like eh, short stint. But either way, so the Snallygaster is obviously kind of like a boogeyman type character. However, it unfortunately has some dark implication, not implications, but it was used to aid racism.
Okay. And I mean, that does circle back to the history of Maryland. All right. So it was an aid for racism?
Yes. So for this next section, I'm literally just gonna read straight from this article. It's called "The Unsettling Legend of Maryland's Native Cryptid, the Snallygaster,"
Okay.
because I like how they made it succinct, but also, yeah,
Get all the information
got all the
across.
information. So,
All right.
many of the original reports of the cryptid strikingly note that the Snallygaster specifically preyed on black people.
Hmm.
On February 12th, 1909, the same day that the NAACP was founded, the Valley Register ran a story titled "The Colored People Are in Great Danger," which described the creature and how this vampire devil only attacks colored people. It is seldom seen during the day, feeding at night only, and the strange part is that it seems to prefer colored men to colored women, though it attacks the latter at times. Another article from that period quotes an eyewitness who claimed that the Snallygaster was an omen of ill for colored voters who deserted the Republican Party in the presidential election. For all its apparent silliness, there was a not at all hidden threat baked into the legend.
So is that the end of the quote?
No. Well, I mean, there's more,
Yeah.
but if you wanted to interject at any
Yeah.
point, you can.
So for context, this was posted in 1909, you said. So for context at that point, Maryland was a border state during the Civil War. What
Mm-hmm.
that means is that they were literally preparing to secede from the Union. Could be an entire episode on that whole saga. Short story, Lincoln stepped in and used federal troops to stop the vote from happening in the first place. But Maryland and a few other border states had Confederate sympathies, or at least had slavery, but did not actually secede. So if you ever grew up learning that the Emancipation Proclamation, for example, freed all of the enslaved people, like that's what I grew up learning.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually look at the text, it frees the enslaved people in the Confederate states, the ones that did not recognize Lincoln's authority, did nothing for the enslaved people in the Union states. So
Mm-hmm.
specifically Maryland, Missouri, I think Delaware is another one. There's a fourth one that I can never remember.
It kind of goes into that here too.
Yeah,
Not as much as you're getting into it
yeah.
though, so that's good.
But in the decades in between the Civil War and the early 20th century, we're getting into Reconstruction, but we're also getting into things like Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
So separate but equal, I think, is a little bit later than this. But in the wake of the Civil War, there's a 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment. 13th Amendment especially says no slavery at all and
Mm-hmm.
no forced labor except as
Mm-hmm.
punishment for a crime. 14th Amendment says all laws need to be applied equally. And then 15th Amendment says that everybody over 18, every male over 18 is allowed to vote. Hey, it's editing Lisa here. Just a heads up. Apparently, I got this one wrong. The 15th Amendment Literally just says the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Could not find an actual age related condition at that point in the 1860s, and the opportunity to vote at age 18 was not around until the 1970s. Just want to clear that up. Okay, bye. And regardless of race or income
Mm-hmm.
status, which opens up voting to poor white people and black men,
Yeah.
or more generally, not white men. Especially with it regarding the 13th Amendment and pro-slavery states, they said, okay, we can't enslave you, but we can punish you for a crime of which you were duly convicted. So one could be arrested for walking with purpose, because what does that even mean?
Mm.
You could be arrested if you're in too much debt for too long of a time, if you're out past a certain time. And I think one that's this article is referring to, for example, there are grandfather laws where if you
Yep.
try and vote and you could get and your grandpa couldn't, you could get arrested. And so that's abiding by the letter of the 14th Amendment,
Mm-hmm.
where everybody has a grandpa, but so technically it follows the
Yeah.
14th Amendment, but it doesn't necessarily, it still bars people that they want to bar from it.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah.
I love when you chime in with stuff.
This is literally on one of my tours, so I kind of feel like I have to.
Oh,
Yeah.
free tour.
Yeah.
As a border state that permitted slavery but never joined the Confederacy, Maryland has a fraught racial legacy. After emancipation, the black community in western Maryland was initially left to fend for itself as white enslavers refused to pay for work they had previously gotten for free. Organizations such as the Freedmen's Bureau quickly stepped in to provide housing, places of worship, and jobs, and in a short time, some newly emancipated Marylanders there seemed like they might have a chance to thrive. An 1870 census taker told a local newspaper at the time that the black families of Western Maryland all seemed to be industrious, well to do, and intelligent. However, by the turn of the century, black Marylanders were leaving for Baltimore and other urban environments. And this context that offers a full appreciation of the Snallygaster's origins. Reports, for example, that the great bird preys upon Negro children out after dark, are in keeping with the kind of weaponized superstition tactics that were common in the South before and after the Civil War. Folklorist Gladys Marie Fry's 1975 Night Riders in Black Folk History documents the numerous ways in which whites would attempt to use urban legend, folklore, and the supernatural as means of control.
They also used literal weapons as means of control. If
Yeah.
you've heard of the phrase sundown towns,
Mm-hmm.
it literally means anyone who is not a certain color and is out in a certain time past sundown will get shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of also what they're doing here. So, according to Gladys, the primary aim of such pressure was to discourage the unauthorized movement of blacks, she writes, especially at night, by making them afraid of encountering supernatural beings. From the post Civil War period to World War I, the method helped to stem the tide of black movement from rural farming communities in the South to the urban industrial centers of the North.
And thus allowing things like sharecropping to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As one of her sources, Evelyn McKinney, explained in 1964, these stories were about things that happened at night, and these were the things that kept you from going out. I mean, these things that kept you in fear, not of the master himself, but of the supernatural. You knew that you may be able to avoid the master because perhaps he was sleeping, but you couldn't avoid the supernatural.
Mm-hmm. So it's meant to be psychological
Psychological.
control, if not more than like actual little physical control.
Exactly. There were ghosts that haunted crossroads, forests, and cemeteries, all of which, particularly before emancipation, would have been vital thoroughfares for escaping slavery.
Mm.
Oh, and this is awful. There were night doctors, men who lurked in northern cities and kidnapped and murdered black people for use in anatomical dissection and medical experimentation. It was not uncommon, particularly during the first era of the Ku Klux Klan activity during Reconstruction, for a group of white men to show up on the porch of a black sharecropper after midnight, claiming to be the ghosts of Confederate soldiers.
Ew. I hate it.
So that you remember that story when you were like, is he the ghost of a
Yeah.
Confederate or
Or a uni.
Union?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a violent and malicious kind of humbug, an honest hoax, so to speak, that dared its victims to disbelieve. Fry also documents how supernatural beasts serve similar purposes as marauding night creatures. Generally, the animal to be feared was not named but only partially described, which added to the slave's fear by leaving his imagination free to explore all kinds of terrible possibilities.
If you hear weird noises in the background, it's new apartment noises. I think our upstairs neighbors are redoing the floors or something.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Also, your neighbors next door like moving out.
yeah, that's
So
probably also it.
there's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Um so basically what would happen is that they would use cryptids and scary stories to kind of try to keep people in check. But also it was also like a thinly veiled threat of like even you better believe in the Snallygaster because something is going to get you.
It could be the Snallygaster. It could be racist white people.
Exactly.
Um, but I mean, if it has like wings and a beak and stuff like that, you know what also flaps around at night? Owls. And
Mhm.
but if you're walking home at night and you hear owls or bats
Mhm.
or something screeching in the manner that an owl or a bat might, like it could be an owl or a bat. It could be the Snallygaster and you could be about to die.
Yeah.
Or both.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Honestly, taking something that was just kind of fun, good fun, and then making it like using it for ill purpose is kind of a thing that humans do.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it started off as just like a very innocent. First of all, take somebody in who's never been to America, plop them in the Appalachian Mountain region. Um,
And tell them that there's not anything there. No.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
so creepy. It's
And
so big and so
yeah.
old.
Yeah. And like especially you say it starts from Germany potentially originally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like similar to a lot of Scottish folks, Highlands folks who come over to Appalachia, and a lot of the folklore has disseminated from there. Like it makes sense that if you get another mountainous region population and then bring them to a different mountain, it's not the
Mm-hmm.
German Snallygaster, it's the American Snallygaster type of
Exactly.
thing.
Despite its negative use in the like 19th century,
Yeah.
still appears in popular culture.
Okay.
It appears as a boss fight in Blair Witch Volume 2, The Legend of Coffin Rock. So that's cool. I guess
Okay.
it's a video game
Okay.
that takes place in 1886. It appears in the 2017 edition of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Okay.
Like describes as a part bird, part reptile, with serrated steel fangs, a bulletproof hide, and a natural sense of curiosity.
Okay.
A creature called the Snallygaster appears in the 2018 Bethesda game Fallout 76. It appears little resemblance to the creature of legend, and it is described in the game as a failed genetic experiment. Oh yeah, in 2011, the annual beer festival,
Yeah.
Beastly Beer Jamboree called Snallygaster started in Washington D.C. Yeah,
Is
so
that the one that you go to?
that's the one that I get to. That's a thing. That's a thing. That's a thing. I can't remember where I saw. Oh, I think that the Snallygaster, and I can't find the source, but it's in one of these articles. But if I remember correctly, oh yeah, apparently, first of all, Theodore Roosevelt wanted to hunt the beast.
Of course he did.
um, oh yeah, but it was apparently at some point there was like a sighting of it where there was like alcohol. So people were like, "Oh, the Snallygaster is." Hold on, hold on. Before I talk out of my ass, let me like try to find this. There was a report that it had died in Washington County when moonshine fumes
Horse
from
moonshine.
overcame it, and fell from the sky into a 2,500-gallon vat of alcohol,
Of course.
which then is hilarious because there's a beer festival named after it, and there's a the Dragon Distillery in Frederick, Maryland, has a Snallygaster blended whiskey named after it. So that's
Love that.
fun.
Love that.
Which I should go to Dragon Distillery.
Yeah.
It's not that far, I'm assuming, from where I live
Yeah.
currently.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
if you said it's only a county or two
it's
over,
only a
it's
county over.
yeah.
And then there's also South Mountain Creamery. Have you seen those South Mountain Creamery?
I feel like I've seen it before.
It's a dairy farm,
Okay.
and I think they deliver.
Oh.
Because I've seen a few in Alexandria of just like houses that have South Mountain Creamery like bin outside
Okay.
of their place.
Okay.
But it's a dairy farm located in Frederick County,
Okay.
which produces an ice cream flavor named Snallygaster,
Of course.
consisting of peanut butter flavored ice cream with caramel swirl, peanut butter cups, and pretzels.
Okay.
And in 2021, Sarah Cooper, a cryptozoologist in Maryland, opened the American Snallygaster Museum in Libertytown, Maryland.
Okay.
So, despite the fact that I had never heard of it before the beer festival,
Yeah.
it seemed to have a very prevalent place
Yeah.
in
Hometown cryptid.
hometown
Yeah.
cryptid.
Yeah.
But literally Maryland has so many cryptids. It also has the goat man,
Yeah.
the bunny man. I guess
Bunny
that
Man
doesn't
is
count as a
yeah.
cryptid.
Well,
That's
Bunny
just,
Man is Virginia.
I thought that was I thought it was Maryland also.
I mean, Devin grew up talking about Bunny Man Bridge. And he grew up in Virginia.
Mm, I
But
believe you,
yeah.
but I'm gonna Google it.
um, Devin, can you
Fairfax
come here for a
County.
sec?
You're correct. Well, it's been spread throughout Washington D.C. and Maryland,
Okay.
but yeah, it says originated from 2 incidents in Fairfax County, Virginia.
Remember how you told me that you told high school girlfriends about the Bunny Man?
Yeah.
Will you tell the pod listeners about the Bunny Man? What you told your...
I do not really know.
So tell me, or tell the listeners what you told me that you told your girlfriends.
Oh my god.
Okay, so my recollection is there's a bridge somewhere around Fairfax County, and my understanding is that I've heard different things, with many urban legends as they are. Usually it's like some dude killed rabbits and displayed them in sort of a Vlad the Impaler sort of way, or it's like a dude in a bunny costume threatening people. So not really sure which of those it's referring to, but there was a bridge you had to drive under to get into the neighborhood I grew up in. And because I was a teenage boy, I thought it would be hilarious to convince my high school girlfriend that that was the bridge from the urban legends. So now she was utterly horrified every time we drove under it. Yeah, you know, because I was a teenage boy and thought that was hilarious.
It is kind of hilarious. I will give you that. Wait. But what if it really was that bridge and you thought you were just joshing, but it turns out you were right the entire time? Ooh.
Ooh. All right, thanks. I love you.
That's basically all I have on the Snallygaster. Technically, it was kind of a 2-for-1 because we also talked about the Dwyo.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what? I was not informed of the topic.
Well, then you should listen to
Listen to
the
Dreary
podcast.
Midnights on Tuesday.
This is what I get for taking naps while you're recording.
Yes, it is. I love you.
Yeah.
So we've covered the whole gamut.
We've covered it. I mean, we
Civil
talked about
War.
the silliness part. We talked about the serious part.
Racism, Bunny Man.
Wolves that walk on 2 hind legs.
Yep, the full gamut. And that's what you get with Dreary Midnight. Any last closing thoughts?
My closing thoughts are I'm I'm really interested in folklore and how something that seems like it's so weird because either it's something that was really really serious and then turns into like a tee hee hee thing, like the like turns into a tourist thing, or
Mm,
it's something that starts off silly and then turns into a serious thing. It's
yeah.
just interesting how people can use something like a ghost story or cryptids, and like what that means to different people and different groups, and how they can either use it for fun times or they can use it maliciously.
Mm,
There's the whole thing of like how many people died because they were apparently changelings.
mm.
But then
When
it's
it's really just like a metaphor for autism or something.
exactly. But then at the same time, there's like the Mothman festival that
Yeah.
happens all the time. So it's
Yeah.
like just interesting to me how folklore can evolve and change over time,
Mm,
and how, depending on what century you're in, what your perception of a certain folklore is.
yeah. And how serious it has to be taken.
Exactly.
I mean, I think, honestly, though, I think in like 100 years, 200 years, whatever, a Snallygaster could have easily be the Baba Yaga of, or the La Llorona of the Maryland foothills,
Yeah.
right? Because both of those are the like, don't do the danger thing as
Mm-hmm.
the warning to the kids, right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how much it would have been used as a warning, like of the from parent to child, don't do the danger thing, versus white people trying to do the tee hee hee, don't do the danger thing, because white people are the danger thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and historically, white people have been the danger thing
In America.
in America. Yeah.
Those German immigrants weren't necessarily
Yeah.
trying to. They were
Yeah.
just like, "Hey, dragons, just like we have at home."
Yeah. Yeah. And like and even dragons could have been don't do the danger thing,
Mm-hmm.
like don't go into the caves, probably because what is falling? Good lord.
That's sorry, that was my foot.
No, you're
I
good.
hit
Uh,
something
yeah, you're
down
good.
here.
But even dragons could be don't do the danger thing and the don't go too far into the caves because then you might not be able to find your way out and then you die
Yeah.
up there and it's a whole way back down to town.
That's why it's kind of like, how does folklore originate? And as it exists, how does it change in order to fit the quote unquote needs of the people telling it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's interesting. I
It
really like
is.
it.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts, dear listeners? Have you tried what's the ice cream? Blue Mountain
South Mountain Creamery.
South Mountain Creamery. I kind of want to try that now.
I know, right?
Yeah.
We'll just come
Yeah.
visit me next time.
Yeah. And
Next
we'll
time you're up
we'll do
where
like a
I'm at.
Patreon review of South Mountain Creamery.
Yeah.
How about that? If you want that, shoot us an email, drearymidnightpodcast@gmail.com, or follow us on Patreon for when we hopefully are able to do that. Patreon.com/drearymidnight. Follow us on Instagram at drearymidnightpod. And with all of that said, don't violate constitutional amendments for the sake of your own racist views. I cannot emphasize that enough. And have some peanut butter ice cream. How about eat the ice cream and don't threaten human rights?
That sounds like a good
Yeah.
time, eating ice cream
Ice cream,
and
human
being
rights.
respectful.
Porque no los dos. Ice cream, keep your ice cream and keep your human rights. And safe travels home on this dreary midnight. Good night.
Good night.